So Eric, obviously, thanks very much for coming on the show for a chat with us. We appreciate you giving us some time, mate.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I was glad you guys reached out.
No, man, we always like getting other, obviously James being a head coach out here at higher level, we always like to get other coaches on because it's really interesting, just stuff that James has said in the past and to get other coaches' perspective.
Absolutely.
So for just anyone maybe out here in our small island that doesn't know you, Eric, can you just tell us briefly what first got you involved in mixed martial arts or combat sports in general?
Probably, my passion for football, American football, led me kind of into MMA, which was the camaraderie. I think the team, the being around like-minded individuals, surrounded myself with people that I felt like raised my level, raised my game. That's essentially what I realized that I missed the most out of competition. Was just that, so I kind of just stumbled across the gym one day, walked in, and Randy Couture was training, getting ready for Tim Sylvia for the heavyweight title. I was just kind of bugging him like, hey, can I come in? Can I train? Can I learn? Can I this? And got the shit kicked out of me for forever. They just couldn't really get rid of me. I love being in here. I love the atmosphere, and it just stuck. I never really intended on coming in to be a professional fighter. What I did intend on was to learn a beautiful sport and a craft and an art, and just occupy my time wisely. And this parlayed into something bigger for me. I always had kind of coaching in my blood. My uncles, my dads were all. My dad was a defensive coordinator, a football coach. All my uncles were head coaches out here out in the valley. My dad coached high level football. So I knew football or coaching was going to be in my bloodline. I never really expected it to be in MMA.
Yeah, and obviously that moving into the coaching side of things, James, you've spoken about this quite a lot in the past. Obviously, you competed for a long time, but you always had it in your head that you kind of always felt that it was going to be coaching where you really, really loved, and competing was just a way then to move into coaching. Was there any similarities in that as well with you, Eric? And I'd love, James, for you to jump in and speak on that. Yeah,
I planned on having one fight. I wanted to be a coach for when I was a kid. I think it was the impression some of the coaches that I had as a kid had on me. Like when I was a wee guy, when you're a kid, your dad's like Superman. And then I'd went to like a karate class, and I thought the karate instructor was Superman, and being like a kind of scared little boy, I was like, I want to do that. And kind of started messing about, teaching moves to my friends and stuff like that. But my idea was to have one fight. But I can't learn stuff. Like you get some coaches who'll never compete, but they're smart enough to be brilliant coaches without it. Whereas I wasn't that smart. I was like, I'm going to have to do this. So I understand it. And the one fight, at first it was kickboxing. I ended up going on having a lot of kickboxing, Thai fights, and then an MMA fight. So I think I ended up with about maybe 63 or 64 fights by the time I was done. But my goal was always to coach. I was coaching the whole time I was competing. Just going back to one thing that Eric said there. So you've went into Xtreme Couture. Randy's getting ready for the UFC heavyweight title against Tim Sylvia, and then in less than 2 weeks now, you're coaching Francis Ngannou for the same heavyweight world title. Man, it's like a big circle. It must be pretty cool.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, and that's kind of a cool way to look at it, man. It certainly has, Coach, and man, that just gave me goosebumps, man. Thinking about that, that's man. It's great to talk to people like yourself, because you know how we get tunnel vision and we just focus on the one task at hand, and sometimes it takes people to pull you out of that perspective and actually look at what full circle looks like. And no, I appreciate you saying that, man. That's a pretty cool sentiment.
No worries.
Just to come back a wee bit there, Eric, obviously, was competing was always thought to move into coaching, and was competing a way to do that, or did it just sort of naturally progress for you, and this is where you've ended up?
Yeah, I mean, I was in the gym every day, 2-3 times a day, and just training every day. And I almost felt like I was doing everything I would be doing to get ready as a pro fighter. At the time when I first started training at Xtreme Couture, there was no amateur team. There was no amateurs at all. It was just either you turned pro or you didn't fight. So I actually got a couple fight offers, and the first time I ever got a fight offer was against Ryan Bader. He would have murdered me. He would have killed me. Fortunate enough, my wife was smart enough to know that, like, hey, we're pregnant with our first child, and I don't think this is a good idea. And I was fine with that. I never really stepped foot into the gym to be this pro fighter. So once, I think, like even Coach was saying, once you kind of know your role and stay in your lane and understand who and what you can accomplish, I found my niche in coaching, and I just kind of stuck with it. So it's been a fun path, that's for sure.
Yeah, and obviously, as James was saying there, you've got the title fight coming up with Francis against Stipe. So I'd love to speak about that for a moment or two. How is things progressing towards the fight in terms of training and preparation? Is everything going as well as it can be, especially under the circumstances at the moment?
Yeah, camp's been going great, and we're just chomping at the bit. We're just ready to go, and as coach would know, it's just like you're in that like 2-week let's hurry up and wait phase. We've been putting so much work and effort in. The nice thing is the gym's been really busy, the team's been busy, guys have been fighting. So for me, I'm kind of one fight to the next, but at the same time, my week is really compiled into this main event title fight with Francis. So, things have been going good, man. Fortunate. We have some really good people surrounding us. That's really helped us out a lot. I'm really looking forward for Francis to go and showcase his all of his skill set on the 27th.
Yeah, and obviously Francis and Stipe have fought before. So how much has Francis, I mean, you can see it in his fights, how much has he evolved as a fighter since that fight against Stipe?
I think tremendously. And, I think a good problem to have. And, people will, the naysayers will come out and say, well, he hasn't looked the same or hasn't proven anything other than the fact he can knock people out. And that's a pretty good problem to have, like, well, he is winning and he's knocking people out. So, but he has been working very hard on all those things that I think to shore up his game. With him being in the system at Xtreme Couture now for the last 5-6 fights, we run our practices a little differently. Our practices are considered MMA practice. We don't just think of one day as a grappling or a wrestling day or a kickboxing day. We want to blend everything together. So inherently, just by, I think, being within the system of Xtreme Couture for quite a while now, he's made a lot of improvements in his game. But the overall fight IQ, I think, is where you can really see his improvement.
Yeah, and you spoke a moment ago about that tunnel vision as a coach. When it starts approaching that fight day, obviously for a heavyweight title fight as well, does the nerves start coming in? We always speak about the nerves the fighters have and dealing with that. But for you as a coach, is that something that you ever get? You experience those nerves leading in, those butterflies?
I'm sure I will for this fight. I haven't really, I think just because we're so busy and, it's one fight to the next. I do a pretty good job of, I think, offloading come Monday. So I give myself like Saturday, Sunday to celebrate or to dwell on things. And then come Monday, I have to turn the page and refocus on the next guy up. So a lot of that, I think mentality has helped with the nerves and the emotions leading up to. But this one definitely is going to be different for me just because, Francis is like a family member to me, and I think there's a little bit more levels of gravity of weight on this particular fight. But, I hope come fight night, I'm just gonna have a big smile on my face, just like I usually do, and go out there and watch this guy perform. I definitely got the best seat in the house.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I've got to ask you as well, do you do pad work in that with Francis?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, how are the arms feeling after Francis hitting pads with you? They must be numb for a bit, right?
Yeah, it's actually more my hands, the impact on my hands. My shoulders and my arms are, fortunately enough, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm not as big as Francis, but I handled it well. To Francis's credit, he's very accurate. He's able to hit the pad correctly. He doesn't like blow your elbows out. So if you misjudge a strike and he's throwing a fastball and you're catching a changeup, you might knock your shoulder off. But for the most part, it's as close as I think I'm ever going to get into jumping in a cage and watching a great white shark swim around. You know what they're capable of doing, that they'll bite your head off at any moment. So you got to respect where you're at when you're there. So yeah, it's definitely, you got to be on your P's and Q's, man, when you hold pads with Francis. Cause if you miss one, you're going to be waking up and he's going to have to tell you what he hit you with.
What do you think, James? Would you fancy that, holding pads for Francis?
Do you know what I would like to maybe hold for a 1-2 and then do it. All right, that's what you're dealing with. Just to kind of get an appreciation of it. I held Thai pads at Invicta once for Pat Barry to kick. I was in a warm-up room with a fighter, and I don't have any heavyweights. I think that the biggest fighter we have here was a welter and a couple of amateur middles. So I was like, God, maybe kick that pad. And I was like, fucking hell. But I'd like to maybe hold like a 1-2 or maybe that right uppercut that lands and then just be like, hey, that's really nice, thank you. But blast my shoulders out, I think.
Get out there while your faculty's still in place. James, I know you had some questions as well for Eric in terms of the gym and everything there. So I'd like you, if you want to jump in and just run through those questions.
You said a really interesting thing there for me. It was when you mentioned about your practices are all MMA practices. This was something we've been trying to move away from in our gym, where you're kind of compartmentalising. So one day you're striking, one day you're wrestling, one day you're on the fence and whatever. And I found that once you have guys in your system for 6 months or a year, then they get better quicker doing the MMA stuff. And this was something I learned, obviously, because when I was starting in MMA like 2001, I was going to a boxing gym one night, then a Thai class, and then a jiu-jitsu class in the gi. And then now you're getting these guys coming in and doing 2 years of training, and they're far more well-rounded than ever was with no gaps and stuff. So it's reassuring for me to hear that like the best gyms in the world are training like that, and it gives me something kind of aim for it. The other thing I was going to ask you, and without dwelling too much on Francis or giving too much away, when a guy like Francis comes to the gym, who's like, he's got that deft touch with the punching, he's a big super athlete. What's the process with working with a guy like that? Like you obviously want to keep pushing his strengths and stuff, but are you trying to like is there a thought there that if you make him maybe too technical, you have him getting in his own way, and maybe it'll take away what makes him so special? Because when he first came to the UFC, he was super raw, and you can see sometimes where the technical guys can't deal with that because he's throwing at a different pace and he's moving a wee bit different for guys who are maybe more systemised, if that's the right word. So what's your process when you get a super athlete, elite level fighter who's probably going to be a heavyweight world champion at one point? What's your process, thoughts as a coach with that?
Coach, that's a great point. And I think a lot of the reasons what makes Francis so great is, you're right, those intangibles. And sometimes when you look at a guy like Alistair Overeem on paper, Alistair's striking prowess and the things that he does is far superior over a guy like Francis, but it's the angles and the creativity that he has. And sometimes to your credit, what you're saying is like, man, like, he's so used to guys that strike with such precision, accuracy. And we kind of have a funny word for it. We call them like boogers. Like they're just awkward, they're awkward. And you're right. And to Francis's credit, those angles and those things that he creates are something you don't want to take away from him. But you also have to understand, he has to understand that some of the problems that we saw in the first Stipe fight was actually just that, was the way he was throwing his punches was getting him off balance. And Stipe had an easier path to get in on that lead leg and wrestle. So you do want to keep him kind of to where he's comfortable, but he's also able to keep his creative control. So a lot of combinations that we set for him will have like branched off paths. So you know what the reads are. If you throw this combination, what are the things that lead off to that? So if you rep things over and over and over, it kind of keeps his muscle memory to where it needs to be. You know, and the other point to that is just what you're saying about like, you know, the system, if you will. You know, if we order from 5 different restaurants and try to make a meal, it's not really a meal. So if we're able to blend everything and make your level change work within your striking so it blends with your wrestling, everything feels like it's cohesive. And that's what we've tried to do a lot with Francis, and making sure that he has that element of his offensive wrestling game can blend with his striking game. So if you can imagine Francis Ngannou taking somebody down, and then if, let's say, the guy gets up and then Francis starts feigning level changes, what does that do to that guy's lead hand? You know, so it makes your striking have a little bit more validity if you're able to implement a complete MMA mindset into your game. So that's been a lot of things I think we focused on with him is really the overall fight IQ.
I think going on to one of your other fighters as well, the word blend, after looking at Dan Ige, obviously when he fought Danny, and then what he's went on to since then, that's what he does better than most of the other featherweights. He's such a threat everywhere, and he disguises everything and blends it, man. So it's interesting to hear. It'll be interesting to see if Francis, how dangerous he's going to be if he starts blending stuff together like that, with that power that he carries.
Yeah, you know, Dan has been, you know, I don't want to. He's my pride and joy. You know, he's a kid that I had in the regional scene. We got to put a lot of work in together, coach. So you know how that is and how that feels, knowing when you have a kid who believes in the system and does all the right things, and it's able to showcase that in the cage. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think he is a guy that's perfect example of, you know, when he understands what his strengths are, how do we exploit those strengths, and how do we hide any of our weaknesses that we might have? But all the meantime, anytime that we have time in between camps, like this last 8 months, when he fought Calvin Kattar to now when he fought Gavin Tucker, we were really able to go back to the drawing board and work on some of those things that I felt Dan needed in his game. And, you know, he didn't really get to show it a whole lot in the Gavin Tucker fight. But again, like we said, it's a good problem to have. And you're absolutely right, man. He's been a system guy for us. So it's been nice being able to watch him go to work.
He's one of my favourite guys to watch, actually, at featherweight. I tell, actually, some of the younger kids around that weight to look at him, just because of the way he puts everything together and stuff. And it's been really cool watching him after he fought Danny in London, just getting better and better and better. It's been really cool, man.
Thank you, coach. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was a pretty quick night against Tucker. That was, 22 seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah, 22 seconds, man. You know, Gavin Tucker's a great kid. He's super talented. I think the sky's the limit for that kid. He's going to bounce back. You know, he did us a huge favor by taking that fight on short notice. A lot of people wouldn't have taken that fight, but he saw the opportunity and going in and fighting Dan. So all credit to Gavin. He's an unbelievable fighter, and you know, I hope to see that kid bounce back in a good fashion.
Yeah, it must be good for you as a coach as well to see Dan go back in there, obviously coming off the back of the Calvin Kattar fight, and get in there and just getting back in that win column. And that, what's that like for you as a coach to see your fighter bounce back and get in there, and especially with such a decisive victory? Yeah,
it was big. It was a big. I think, you know, Dan's just a different breed of cat. Mm-hmm. He really looks into a lot of the naysayers. I'm not a big, internet troll guy and people reading what shitty comments people have to say about you, but Dan uses that as fuel. He's just built a little different. So he takes that to heart, and he takes it to heart in a way that it motivates him. So I'm proud of the kid. He could have really gone the other way. This fight could have gone completely different, and we're right back to the drawing board. But after the Calvin Kattar fight, we took a lot of really good positive things from that fight. Although he did lose, he did really showcase a lot of things that he's capable of. And I left the Calvin Kattar fight very happy with what I saw out of Dan. The cage time, the experience that he got, I thought was invaluable. And we fought a dude in Calvin Kattar who's one of the best in the featherweight divisions, and we hung right there with him. So I thought it was an important fight. And then you got to see the maturation in the last 8 months out of Dan.
Yeah, and the fight was obviously scheduled with Ryan Hall. Do you feel that's a fight that may come back on the horizon?
Honestly, I don't think so. I mean, Ryan Hall was he doesn't move the needle in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, he's a tough kid. Don't get me wrong. He's very tricky. He's not an easy guy to plan for. But again, it's like, this is a risk reward when you fight a guy like Ryan Hall, is you don't know if he's actually going to make it to the fight. He's fought, what, 4 times in 4 years? I don't even know what it is. So we were actually, I thought, doing him a favor by taking the fight, because no one really wants to fight him. So yeah. Dan Ige, to his credit, is like, dude, I'll fight anybody at any time, anywhere. And then that was the risk that we knew when we signed on the dotted line with Ryan Hall, was he might not make it to fight night. So be ready for anybody. And that's exactly what happened. So I think after the way Dan won and beat Gavin Tucker, you know, Ryan Hall's not even in our vocabulary, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that just accepting that fight, just to come back to that, it does speak on Dan's character, because, like you say, Ryan Hall, he doesn't move the needle. Maybe not a lot of MMA fans are familiar with him, but he's a very dangerous opponent. So I think that does speak volumes about Dan.
Yeah, it's tough to look good against a guy like Ryan Hall unless you just go out and starch him. You know, but he's a tough guy stylistically to look good. Anytime you put pressure on him, he's Imanari rolling or butt flopping or doing or whatever. And, you know, it's just not a fan-friendly fight. You know, I had a corner against him with Gray Maynard. You know, to Ryan's credit, he did a good job and he won the fight. It just wasn't fun. It wasn't anything that was very of interest, to be quite fair. And, you know, I think what Dan did last Saturday, he's now past that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously you are now looking up the division for Dan. I would assume that's the case moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that Korean Zombie fight makes a lot of sense for him.
Yeah, that's definitely a fun fight, and like you say, that's one that the fans will enjoy, because Korean Zombie, if nothing else, Korean Zombie puts on a show when he comes to fight. That would actually be a really fun fight. Those
two will bring it. That's for sure. That'll be a fun fight. That's a main event fight, definitely.
Oh, 100%. I could see the smile coming on there, Eric, when we started talking about that fight. That
fight gets me up, man. Those guys, he comes from a great camp at Fight Ready. He's got a great coach in Eddie Chaw. You know, I've been a fan of the Korean Zombie for a long time. I'm a competitor, man. I want to compete against the best, and Korean Zombie's right up there to the top. So we want to fight the guys who are going to bring the best out of us, and that's him. So yeah, that fight gets me excited, man.
And another thing, just to come back on to the gym as well, I'd love to hear a bit about the dynamics in the gym between you and the other coaches, how everything blends together, and obviously that working well shows in the fighters. Can you speak a wee bit about that?
You know, we have a great system here, and I think it's unlike many others. You know, we all play an integral role into the gym. You know, Dennis Davis runs the programs here. He's essentially the head coach of the gym, but we're all head coaches for our specific fighters. And then, like, for example, Brad Tavares, you know, Ray Cefo's Brad Tavares' head coach. I fill in as his secondary coach, if you will. You know, so we all can kind of interchange out of that head coach second role position very well. We've all worked with one another as a coaching staff. We understand that there's enough cake to go around that everybody can eat. So if you have that kind of mentality where we take care of one another as coaches, then I feel like the boat is being rowed in the right direction, and not one guy's rowing the wrong way. You know, if there's any little banter or shit talking going on, I put an end to that stuff real quick. We have coaches meetings regularly, and that's important, because if you have something to say, get together with your coaching staff and get it out there. But, you know, Eddie Baracco does a phenomenal job. Nate Pettit, Ray Cefo, Dennis Davis, myself. You know, it just works very well for who and what we have, because we do have a big stable of fighters. The important thing, and I think Coach will echo that, is that every fighter feels like they're getting the time that they need. You know, so if they feel like they're being taken care of, then everybody else is going to feel like they're getting taken care of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And James, you'll know yourself how important that is between coaches in a gym. Obviously, for everyone to be helping each other and ultimately just there to improve fighters. That's the end goal for everyone, I would presume, in the gym.
Yeah, there has to be a complete lack of ego as well for them all to work, kind of for the greater good, for the same purposes and stuff. But when it clicks, it clicks. Like that's what makes the gyms like Xtreme Couture so special. But the guys are on the same page. Everybody wants to get better. There is gyms, and you see a lot of gyms where there's big fallouts and splinters and stuff like that, where guys have clashed. But you can see it when guys come for Xtreme Couture. You know what you're getting. You're getting a really well skilled, well prepared fighter, and it's really cool to watch.
Thank you, Coach. Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the bottom line common denominator is all the coaches here just want to see the wins. And I think when you start delving into like the specialty coach idea, where we pride ourselves in being MMA coaches and not a specialty coach, well, it doesn't matter the facet of the way the win is won. It's like you got a boxing coach. He obviously wants to win by his style or his pedigree. He wants his style to be shown. Jiu-jitsu coach wants guys to get submissions. We don't think like that. We just want W's, and guys might have a little bit more specialty in certain areas. But at the end of the day, if the win is the bottom line common denominator, then every coach here is happy.
And Eric, that's something you must have seen cornering fighters and cornering opposing other corner teams. You'll see that the different coaches trying to have their influence, and sometimes you can hear it in corners. It's almost like counterproductive advice from different coaches, and just ultimately confusing fighters. That's something you must have cornered against and heard in the past.
100%. It's something that's happened here in the past. I've been here for 14 years now, so the egos and the personalities of coaches have come and gone. And I think a lot of times that was one of the things that stuck out to me the most was the specialty coaches wanted their fighters to win in their specific genre, and really the end game was just to get a win. And sometimes you saw that clash in the corner where one guy's yelling takedown, one guy's yelling head kick, right? So you started to understand, it's like, look, whoever's the head coach in the corner should be the one with the voice. That's what's been delegated to them. Everything else should be filtered through that head coach. And if you don't like your role, if you don't like that position that you have, you can either A, get out, or follow in line. I take a lot of pride in having corners that are concise, that are calm and under control, because if we're all anxious and screaming and yelling, then that's exactly what's going to be projected onto our fighter. You saw that in some fights last year. There's a couple fights that I saw where I remember 3 or 4 guys yelling in the corner, and it just felt like chaos. And the fighter was fighting with chaos, and it didn't have a feel or a vibe to it the way that it should. So it's all very important to make sure your corner and the coaching staff is cohesive and they understand what the goal is.
Yeah, I think over the last year we've seen some interesting corners, from obviously Mike Perry having his girlfriend in the corner to Diego Sanchez, his coach in the corner. There's been some interesting corners in the UFC of late.
For sure. And, the fact that it's been quiet, you don't have fans, I think that's been brought to light a lot more. You see how these corners are actually working. And it is an art. It is a craft. You have to be able to understand who and what your fighter, what are they there for? So, some people you can yell at, some people you have to coddle. You have to understand who and what you have in front of you, and how do you direct that message to them that sticks to them, not just like screaming at everybody,
Yeah, that's something I was going to say. And James, you'll know as well, you in the corner, you have to adapt. This is where knowing your fighter comes into play. You need to know what to say at the right times and how to say things. So I guess that's something you develop with a fighter over time, and having a relationship with them and knowing them not just as a fighter but as a person.
It's you do get to know their personality when you're working with them so close every day, and then even when you're away in the hotel fight week and stuff, you start to see wee bits of their personality and their character, and that kind of always leads on to how's the best way to approach it, how's the best way to talk to them. And some guys need shouted at, and some guys need whispered at, and some guys you don't even really need to speak to. You can just look at them. That's the difference for me, is how the better coaches work. Is they treat every single fighter as an individual, but they care about them, and they get to know them on a level outside of just what techniques do they like, and how they fight. It's sort of personality they know. And you kind of do that with like a cookie cutter approach, where you're just treating everybody the same, or teaching the same and stuff like that. But how much of coaching, I like looking at other sports. So you're saying like your family are football coaches. How much has that influenced your MMA coaching, Eric?
Immensely. And I think really it has more to do with the film study, because that's kind of how I was brought up with my dad. A lot of time that I spent with my old man was in the film room, because he was so occupied during the season on breaking down tape. So anytime I wanted to get time with my dad, it was usually on a VHS tape watching the next week's opponent. So I learned how to look for patterns. I learned how to look for similarities in play calling or the way guys were doing things, and I almost just kind of just engulfed that into the same mindset for MMA. So it's helped me a lot there. Understanding, just like you said, Coach, like as a quarterback, I had 10 other personalities on the field, and you understanding how to direct those personalities is important too. How some guys you might have to grab by the face mask and yell at. Some guys you have to pat on the back and tell them they're doing a good job. So understanding who and what you have in front of you is important. Skill sets change. So for me as a coach, I understand that I can't coach Uriah Hall the same way I'd coach Brad Tavares. They have very different skill sets. So being able to take their attributes and make those attributes shine is important too. And it takes away from the cookie cutter element. So it's like, well, Uriah Hall's not going to want to do X, Y, and Z, but Brad might, so being able to be adapting to the fighter, I think is also very important. And I learned that a lot with football because of personnel. You might not be able to run a certain offense or a certain defense because you don't have the proper personnel to run that particular offense or defense. So all of that's really helped me out a lot. And moreover, just understanding how to connect with the fighter, I think that's helped me a lot through football.
Yeah, perfect. And I'm conscious of the time here, Eric. We don't want to, I know you've got practice coming up here. So, James, have you got any? I've got a couple more questions. Have you got anything else, James, you want to ask? And then I'll wrap up in the last couple.
I've got the main ones out the way. The football thing, actually, American football's not that big here, but I watched that Netflix season, Last Chance U.
Yeah,
and the amount of film study on it. Now that you've mentioned that, there's so many scenes where they're sitting and looking at tape before next week's opponent and stuff. So it makes sense. But I really like any of the kind of well-established sports where that make a lot of money, like football or basketball and baseball. That's where the level of coaches is far superior to kind of minority sports. Like the level of coaching in MMA is obviously progressing and getting better. But when we had a wrestling coach over for a bit called Mike Childs, and when I watched this guy coach, obviously because they've been doing it for so much longer and it's an actual profession, I took a lot for it. So it was interesting you saying the thing about the football players, man, with the tape study, because I know they guys they're very, very big in it. I know a lot of MMA coaches obviously will look at it. I know some fighters don't, but it's kind of, you'll be the same as me. You go home for the gym at 10 o'clock at night and you're up to 12 o'clock watching tape or messaging people looking for links and shit. It makes complete sense, actually, now that how you're dissecting stuff with the background, sitting with your dad watching American football. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was probably some of my fondest memories too, just thinking about that with my old man. And he would give me something to do, whether it was at the time maybe pretty pointless, but for me it was like a big job. He's like, I want you to watch this player on this down and tell me what he does. And for somehow just it really resonated with me and understanding tendencies and patterns. A lot of times too for us is in MMA, like you look at personalities and egos. So sometimes what I'll see is like an ego fighter. What does that mean? Well, let's say the guy gets kicked with the leg kick and he gets mad and he wants to kick you back, right? So he mirrors a lot of the things that you do. So if I could do that better, watch. So we use that as traps. So sometimes we'll throw, a jab cross inside low kick and have you try to throw a naked inside low kick, the rifle right hand down the pipe because you're an ego fighter, try to set traps that way because we understand your tendencies and what you try to do.
Like a Jedi mind trick, that one.
Yeah, try.
Yeah.
Get it and get it back. And what coaches do you look up to? You're obviously you've been around if you've been at Xtreme Couture for 14 years, you've been around some of the very, very best, and generally the best coaches in the game are in America anyway just now. But what guys do you look up to?
Well, Dennis Davis has been a huge role, played a big role in my career. Ray Seffo, especially Ray too. So those two really have been some of my main guys. Robert Follis, when Robert came out here, I've known Robert for a long time prior to him moving to Vegas. So he was a Team Quest guy. He believed in me in a lot of ways as far as my leadership characteristics go. He would always tell me that once he felt like my MMA fight IQ caught up to my leadership, he goes, he'd always tell me, I think you're going to be one of the best in the game. So Robert was very important for me. Now, outside of Xtreme Couture, Henry Hooft has been a big influence on me in my life. He's a guy that I can pick up the phone and call and ask advice on, and the guy that I really feel comfortable in talking to. And Trevor Whitman's the same, Dwayne Ludwig. So some really good guys, Brandon Gibson. I feel like that community, that camaraderie that we have as coaches is important, because a lot of people don't understand what we go through on a day-to-day basis. All the shit that we got is our phone is constantly ringing with their problems put on our plate, and how do we manage our time and how do we manage our family? It's important to always have those support systems of coaches that really understand what this game's all about. And it's nice to be able to pick up the phone and talk to guys that really get what we have to do on a day-to-day basis.
That's a pretty impressive list of names you've mentioned there. That's some pretty good company to be in. So the just last thing I wanted to just finish off on was just it's a double question really.
Yeah, no problem.
I just want to know about your best and worst moments in the sports and mixed martial arts.
I feel like, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. There's been some amazing moments. Lance Palmer winning the PFL title was an amazing experience for me. I think watching Dan Ige's career, the way his career's unfolded, has been amazing. Being around individuals like Francis Ngannou and Brad Tavares with their resiliency, the way they carry themselves as professionals has been amazing. I don't really have a low moment because I feel like every day in this sport is a blessing. The lows, I think, are complemented by highs. I try to keep myself in that middle ground, never too high, never too low.
Yeah.
I felt like, it was important to show, I think, a little bit of contrite when the way Dan won against Gavin Tucker. I didn't want to celebrate too much at all, because I've been on the other side of that. And I feel like MMA karma is real, and I think you need to carry yourself as a professional. So when Dan won, I went in and I actually checked on Gavin before I even congratulated Dan, because I think we've been on both sides of the fence there. And I know how it feels to be, picking your guy up off the ground. And I know how it feels to see the other guy celebrating in a fashion that's not very professional.
Yeah.
So, the highs come, the lows are there too. But I think just kind of staying somewhere on that middle ground keeps me where I need to be. And come Monday, no matter what happens on Saturday, you got to be at your best, because the rest of the team is depending on their coach to be 100% when they get back in here on Monday.
Yeah, it's no time off for coaches. It's non-stop. And obviously, if you're asked that question again, you can maybe throw Francis winning the belt into that mix and add that to another list of successes going forward for you in the gym.
Yes, sir.
We won't take any more of your time up, Eric. We really appreciate you coming on and chatting to us. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, guys. Anytime. And, when Coach reached out, man, I was stoked to be able to talk to him. I think you guys are doing an awesome job. So anytime you guys need me, man, just give me a shout.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Bye. Have a good night.